Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Udis, and this is the series on DCTV about the network of global corporate control. And thanks, as always, to Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Mo Jackson, audio and teleprompter, and we've got Cruchet Starnes as our floor director tonight. And we're coming to you live, as I said. We're back in Studio B, which means that sometimes you can see my hands and sometimes you can't, because this is a virtual desk. And also, the teleprompter is not working tonight, which means I'm not reading anything. You can take the script that I sent you earlier today on Twitter and my social media, and you can just rip it up because we're ad-libbing. Hopefully, I'll cover most of the ground. What I wanted to devote the program to is something called legitimacy. What does legitimacy mean? It means that something is doing what it's supposed to be doing, as opposed to misleading you because it's not supposed to be doing anything. And one of the signs of legitimacy, when we're talking about the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, is whether they're actually going to do what they were set up to do, which is to deliver the world's wealth to the world's people. It's a big co-op, and that's what it was set up to do at the end of World War II in 1950. And you can see from something called the Bilateral Minefield Breakthrough Successor Agreement, which that was agreed to by all of the governments. It was signed by Dwight Eisenhower and Harry Truman, and also the royalty. Everybody agreed that after 50 years, all of the world's wealth that was on deposit in a special trust was going to come out, and the institutions that were set up at the time, the Bretton Woods institutions, were legitimate. They were the ones that were supposed to say what was going to happen to the world's wealth. And I didn't know anything about the world's wealth being put on deposit, but I did find out from a lawyer who had been at the very founding when the Bretton Woods institutions were set up. That was a Dutch lawyer named Aaron Broekes, and he was an old man by the time I got to know him. He told me that the legal department of the World Bank and I.M.F. had a very special role because the Board of Governors, that's the countries, they were the ones that were in charge, and that was every 6 months they were supposed to meet. But then there was a resident executive board, and the largest countries would have one single vote on the board, and some of the other smaller countries would be grouped together in constituencies, and they were supposed to be actually running the place. Well, that didn't happen. In 2 years, there was a special memo. It wasn't agreed in the articles. It was just a memo that said that the board was going to step back and let the president of the World Bank and the managing director of the International Monetary Fund run the place. And we know now, when we look at what's actually been going on, that the president of the World Bank and the managing director of the I.M.F. have actually been working for the network of global corporate control. And this network, this is a group of companies, and is actually all bound together and is one huge conglomerate. And at the very heart are the central banks, which are printing paper money in a big scam, because the actual wealth of the world, the diamonds, the gold, the platinum, is on deposit in a trust for the benefit of humanity, and it's the countries that are supposed to be running the World Bank and I.M.F. And so what Aaron Broekes told me, he gave me the operational manual. He said that the legal department is in a very central role because they're like a traffic cop. They're the ones that will give voice to the board. And what Aaron Broekes did was, after he told me this little operation manual, this insider story, he actually abdicated his role because he was afraid. So he was dominated by Robert McNamara, who became the president of the World Bank for 10 years. And he didn't give voice to the board. But he told me that was what the legal department was supposed to do. So I sat there, and after about 5 or 10 years of minding my business in the legal department, I started getting out of line. I would go up to the 12th floor, which is where the executive directors were, and I would talk to them, and I would ask them what they thought they were supposed to be doing if they weren't really running the place. And by then, I could see that the World Bank was actually corrupt. I found this out in a number of ways. One of the ways I could tell that it was corrupt was because when a lawyer is working for it's called an issuer that issues bonds on the capital markets, there's supposed to be accurate financial statements. There's supposed to be something called internal controls, which means that if something is wrong, you're supposed to tell the board, and the board is supposed to correct the problem. And I could see that things were absolutely not right. There was a special study group that was set up that I got to be part of. I was representing the staff association at the time, and what was going on was totally inside out. We had, it was called the Drysdale Committee. This was at the end of the East Asia financial crisis. And what this committee was supposed to be doing, the board said they could see that the personnel department was running amok. And so they brought in an expert from IBM. His name was Alberto Bazan. And we decided to see what a well-managed company would do. And what it would do was the good managers would be promoted and the bad managers would be fired. And Alberto Bazan came to me after a year, and he said, every time I go in to try to talk to Jim Wolfenson to tell him who's a good manager, that person gets demoted or fired. And when I tell him who's a bad manager, that person gets promoted. And he said, and I don't think I'm going to be lasting very much longer. And sure enough, Alberto Bazan was thrown out. So this was the opposite of what a well-managed company and internal controls are supposed to be doing. And I was also working on the Philippines. That was the third country that I got assigned to. First, I got assigned to the Middle East. And after about 10 years, when there was corruption in Yemen, and I went back and told my boss, Ibrahim Shihada, that the people couldn't build a port in Aden because of the corruption, I got reassigned to the Philippines. And then when I was in the Philippines, I could see that there was all kinds of corruption going on there. One of the projects that I was assigned to was at the end of the East Asia financial crisis, and it blew up. What happened was there was the loan got canceled. There was a run on the second largest bank in the Philippines. And then when the evaluation department was supposed to explain what happened, they lied to the board. And you can't lie to the board. So I corrected the evaluation. I said, it was very clear that this was a lousy project and we didn't do anything right. And there was a run on the bank, and the government had to bail out the Philippines National Bank for $500 million when the depositors tried to get their money back out of the bank. So how can you say that to the board that this was a satisfactory project? It was absolutely a cover-up to the board. And then I started complaining to everybody, and I was getting nowhere complaining. So I just kept on complaining, and by that time I had gotten something called the power transition model, which came to the World Bank in 2004 from the Department of Defense. And this is a very, very accurate model using game theory. And this was telling me that it was possible to clean up the corruption at the World Bank. I still didn't know that the World Bank was supposed to deliver all of the assets in the global debt facility. all of the world's monetary gold reserves. But I did know, because of this power transition model, that we could clean up the problem inside the World Bank. And then it turned out that it was really world corruption that we were supposed to be cleaning up. And I just kept going. And one of the things about me is that when when people try to dissuade me, I usually dig in my heels and do the exact opposite. So whenever anybody says that it seems that I'm being directed by other people, anybody that knows me has to laugh, because nobody has ever succeeded in directing me. That's just the nature of who I am. I'm, I guess a fancy word for that is oppositional. And then when I was trained at NYU as captain of the fencing team, I decided that I liked the martial arts. I liked being on the fencing pad, and whenever anybody was trying to scare me off, the training that I got from my Hungarian fencing coach, Bela Dishagi at NYU. NYU was a very good school to go to if you liked fencing. And I didn't really know anything about fencing, but I did know that I wanted to do something. And in Greenwich Village, there wasn't even enough space for a basketball court or a volleyball court. So if you were going to do any sport at all, you might as well do fencing. And so I took up fencing. And when you've got Bela Dishagi attacking you and shouting at you, you realized that the only thing to do when you're under attack is to focus, because if you didn't focus and you got intimidated by Bela Dishagi, he would score every single time. So that training, that drilling, really helped me at the World Bank, because I was under incredible attack and I was just fencing. And that was what actually, I think Jim Wolfenson was a fencer. And when I started fencing with Jim Wolfenson, and I could see he was lying, I wasn't going to quit. And by that time, I had made friends with some of the people on the board, including the man that was representing the Dutch government. Although when people realized what it was I was trying to do, I would be friends with them, and then they would disappear for a while. But anyway, the man who was representing the Dutch government at the time, Peter Steck, was meeting with me and Jim Wolfenson for a while. And of course, I was working together with a lot of other whistleblowers at the World Bank. And what I've been doing in the last 20 years, as you watch, is that I like to work together in teams. That's one of the things that you're trained at the World Bank. You're given training in project management, and the first thing that you're taught is to recognize your own weaknesses and bring people onto a team to help you overcome your weaknesses. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been fencing and working in teams. And let me tell you a little bit about the team that I'm working with now to return the world's gold to the world's people. The most important members of this team are the people that are following this broadcast every week, writing in dutifully in the comment section on the YouTube when we upload this, and we're correcting our mistakes. And one of the very important people on the team, you've seen this, is the journalist from Japan, Izumi Takahashi. And what she wrote about, and that's really one of the important things that I had to talk about last week. She was talking about the group of us that were all attacked under this military technology called extremely low frequencies. Anyway, since I don't have the teleprompter, let me ask Carmen to run the first clip, which talks about some of the other people that noticed that we were onto something when we were talking about corruption at the World Bank. So, Carmen, if you could show the first clip.
Under the annually extended national state of emergency, it is lawful, and that is why we're not getting any pushback from any thought or idea of representation, which of course we don't have. We have a de facto government. It's mega corporations and bankers and banks that has been posing as a legitimate government, and it is not. And this is going to be the topic of today's show, in the sense that we have to break this down at some point, and we're choosing to really delve into the bankruptcy of 1933. And my co-host, Al Whitney, has really been parsing this and pulling this apart. And so, Al, I know that you have gone to great efforts to look at some of the recent statements that Karen Hudes, the former attorney for the World Bank, has been saying. And I'd like you to start that conversation with what you have pulled together that Karen Hudes has stated.
Well, I'll tell you, if people want to get kind of an overview, we're going to share comments that we have in an interview that Karen Hudes did that will confirm an overview that Judge Dale wrote about the bankruptcy of America - 1933. And it is on the Anti-Corruption Society webpage. You can go there and type in the search box, the bankruptcy of America. You will get to the page, and that is an excerpt from his book where he explained what all took place in relationship to the bankruptcy of 1933. Lots of things changed, and very interesting, as Deborah pointed out, all these significant changes that took place are in our history book, amazingly enough. A lot of people seem to understand that FDR confiscated the people's gold, but he doesn't. They don't really understand what else transpired at that point. And our government was pretty much turned upside down with that event. Make it, a little briefer. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private banking cartel, took over the U.S. Treasury, was given control of the Treasury in 1920. They formed the corporation, United States Corporation Company, which they intentionally raided and bankrupted. So by 1933, all that was left for them to confiscate was the people's gold, which they got Roosevelt to do. The World Bank attorney, former World Bank attorney, Karen Hudes, is quite knowledgeable on this. What she's doing right now is she's trying to get someone in the government to accept gold that is being made available to back the U.S. dollar. Well, the U.S. dollar is really the Federal Reserve note, the currency of the private Federal Reserve. But Ms. Hudes is proposing that the Treasury be restored to the corporate government and that the Federal Reserve be shut down. Lots of people are saying that the solution for our country, the most important thing that could happen, is the elimination of the Federal Reserve. And in 30.
Let me cut in right here. I am not saying that any of this monetary gold should go to the bankers or to the elites. The 188 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and I.M.F. have said that I speak on their behalf as the overseer mandate trustee. And I am saying that the currency reset is what should happen. So all of the monetary gold reserves should go into the people's currency. And we are not going to just give this currency out, but it's going to be having a ceiling. In the United States, it's up to $1 million per person. And then the people themselves are going to decide if anybody else gets more of that. And we're going to be cleaning up the banks before the banks are given any of this currency. And the way we're going to proceed is we are going to be in discussion groups, grassroots. We're going to have local currencies, and all of the countries are going to be getting national currencies. And the very first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting rid of this idea of country debt. What is country debt? That's simply a scam, because the way currency now works, it's based on debt. It's not based on gold or any assets. And that is a stupid system. When you have to pay interest on country debt and that money goes to the central bankers, they're getting interest on debt. That's, I mean, when you understand how currency works nowadays, it's just a huge scam. And you have to sit down and figure this out. Many people already have. And once you realize what a scam country debt is, trying to get assets from Greece, when Greece doesn't owe any money, because it's the bankers that owe us money. The bankers owe over $2 quadrillion, and all of this money that the bankers owe, we have recorded that. We have liens on that. So all we really have to do is we have to understand where we are. We have to work together, and we can turn it around. And the most important thing is this power transition model, which tells us that enough people understand about this scam and enough people are working together in a coalition. There's no reason for Russia and Germany and Japan and the United States to be at each other's throats. This is just a concoction of the network of global corporate control that controls the media. And by now, enough people realize that they're not getting the news from the media. What they're getting is lies from this network that's just seizing control when they have no assets and they're really bankrupt and they're getting wound down. So how are we going to convince enough people that these are true facts on the ground? Because a lot of people are critical. They say, look, this is all very well and good, but you're not making enough progress. Not enough people understand what's going on. But the most important people that understand what's going on are the elites, because they were there in 1950 when the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement was signed. And a lot of them are coming up with crazy ideas to try to justify why they should get the money. And they've been coming to various people, and we've been exposing them, and we've been disqualifying them. And so by now they realize, I had a conversation a while ago with somebody who was calling me up, and I said, okay, you want me to disclose that you're yet another crook that's trying to steal the world's monetary gold reserves? And of course, the biggest crook is General Dunford. And General Dunford thinks that he has the right to run this country under martial law, and we've exposed him. And there's a lawyer working for the Vatican named I.M.F. and she tried to get a commercial lien on the world's assets, and we exposed her. And what they did was they came into my computer and erased everything, and they thought that with those dirty tricks they could manage to steal the world's monetary gold reserves. But enough people are working with us that my computer is actually, if you saw how it works, it's really pathetic, because there are about 17 or 18 different groups that have succeeded in hacking into my computer. So no sooner did I.M.F. and the crooks in the network of global corporate control erase what I had written and tweeted, but somebody else got in my computer and restored it. So I was able to show that I.M.F. was just simply a crook. Anyway, I'm straying from the teleprompter, and I did want to show the second clip, which is showing everybody that we have to work from the heart. So let's, Carmen, can you run that second clip?
There it is. It's saying, we all want a world filled with peace and with joy, with plenty of water for each girl and boy. That bright shining world is just waiting to start. No meanness or sorrow, just cleanness tomorrow, if only you follow your heart. See there? Even your heart knows you should follow your heart.
Peace and joy, plenty of water. I guess I do want those things.
Well, there was something else your heart was saying. Maybe something I shouldn't have heard.
There was?
I definitely heard something.
Well, what was it?
I don't know. Let me try again. Maybe I can make it out this time. There it is. So faint. It's saying, follow into the open air, far from squalor and noise. Follow, someone is waiting there. Someone who shares all your hopes and your joys. Oh, someone is waiting there. My heart was telling me those exact words just the other day.
It was?
Well, sure. Squalor, noise, hopes, joys. It was telling me about all of those things.
I didn't know two hearts could speak as
I
one.
didn't either. Until now. Here. Listen.
Someday I'll meet someone whose heart joins with mine. Aortas and arteries all intertwined. They'll beat so much stronger than they could apart. 8 chambers of muscle to hustle the love in our heart. Love is kind and considerate. Love is peaceful and fair.
Love can creep up so suddenly.
When you least think of it, your love is there.
We all want a world filled with peace and with joy, with plenty of justice for each girl and boy. That bright shining world is just waiting to start. No anger or badness, just laughter and gladness. If only I'd fall.
Well, we've got 2 minutes left. I just want to let you know that we're actually in pretty good shape. And that is because think of how many of us know about the world's monetary gold reserves that are going back into the world's currency, that there's no reason for any of the governments to be at each other's throats because they're not legitimate, actually. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to be talking about the legitimate U.S. government. So let me thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is about illegitimacy. Our hearts are pretty good about warning us when something is illegitimate. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Udis.